Hi friends, how are we doing today? So we are going to be looking at major events in a story. Do you know what that means to be a major event? It means that it is the things that lead up to the problem. Minor events are, no, they're events in the story, but they don't directly have to do with the problem coming into existence. So we are going to read My Rotten Red-Headed Older Brother today. And we're going to see what types of events in the book lead to the problem, okay? So let's try and think of what those might be. So they're essential to our plot of the story. All right, let me move my computer. So here's a picture. My brother and our mother and I all lived with my grandparents on their farm in Union City, Michigan. Now, my babushka, my grandmother, knew lots of things. She knew just how to tell a good story. She knew how to make ordinary things magical, and she knew how to make the best chocolate cake in Michigan. After she told my brother and me a grand tale from her homeland, we'd always ask, "Bubby, is that true?" She'd answer, "Of course it's true, but it may not have happened," and she'd laugh. Now, I knew that she loved me all right, but I couldn't quite understand how she could even like my older brother, Richard. He had orange hair that was like wire. He was covered in freckles and looked like a weasel with glasses. The one thing that my bubby didn't seem to know was how perfectly awful my brother really was. Mind you, he was always nice whenever he was around us, but as soon as she'd leave, he would do something terrible to me and laugh. So there's Richard. And then there is our babushka. There were so many things that I couldn't stand about him. The worst was that he always told me he could do just about everything better than I. "But I can pick more blackberries than you can," he jeered at me one day. "No, you can't." "Can so, can not." "Can," he whispered. "Not," I said louder. "Can," he whispered so low that I could hardly hear him. "Not!" I screamed back. Do you guys have a sibling that you don't get along with? Because it sounds like they don't really get along. We both picked berries for most of the afternoon. Well, he upped and did it. He not only picked more berries than I, he set a record that wasn't even challenged for the next 10 years. "You make me sick, Richard Barber," I yelled at him. Then he smiled that smile that only a rotten, red-headed older brother could smile. I guess I would have to face it. He could run the fastest, climb the highest, throw the farthest, sit the longest, get the dirtiest, burp the loudest, and spit the farthest. He had no equal, certainly not me. And I'm 4 years older than you. Always have been and always will be, he sneered. There had to be something I could do that he couldn't. Then an inspired thought comforted me like a fresh breeze on a hot summer day. "Oh, Richie," I cooed as I stood next to the rhubarb bushes. "Do you like rhubarb?" "No," he said. "It's the sourest stuff on this planet." Now I knew at long last that I had him. "But I can eat more of this raw rhubarb than you can without getting the puckers," I challenged. "I don't think so." "I do." "I don't," he said, narrowing his eyes. "I do," I insisted. "Don't," he hissed, looking smug. "Do," I said furiously as I grabbed the first stalk and started chewing it almost down to the leaf. So it looks like the major events are going to be what? Challenging each other, maybe? When I couldn't get one more sour bite into my mouth, he was still eating with relish. I thought you said you don't like rhubarb, I said with pursed lips. I don't like it. I love it, he announced, and he popped the last stalk into his mouth. I was so mad, I couldn't even feel how my belly was starting to ache. I can't stand you, Richard Barber. I double dog can't stand you, I screamed as I went into the house to be consoled by my grandmother. Yeah, I'm 4 years older than you, too, you little twerp. Always have been and always will be, he called after me. Then he laughed that rotten, red-headed older brother laugh. I would feel very upset, too, especially since you want to be at least good at something that somebody else has always been better at than you. That night at dinner, I could hardly eat. Have you been eating angry apples again, child? Bubby asked as she sliced me a huge wedge of rhubarb pie. I baked your favorite. Richard gave me one of his extra rotten, weasel-eyed, greeny-toothed grins. At bedtime, my Bubby came and sat on the edge of my bed like she did every night. Look, a falling star, she said. We watched it streak across the sky. Then she spit twice between her fingers and gave her chest a loud slap. Why did you do that, Bubby? I asked. I was making a wish. Didn't you know that wishes on falling stars come true? At last I knew how I was going to get back at my brother. For the longest time I watched the dark sky until I saw a star shoot across the night. Then I spit between my two fingers and slapped my chest. It was done. My wish was to do something, anything, better than my brother. I'd show him. The next morning, all I could think about was my wish. I was thinking about it so hard I almost didn't notice the wagons and trucks pulling into the field down the near Four Corners. A traveling carnival, my brother shouted as he ran toward me. They're setting up right here in our field. Bet I can eat more hot dogs than you can, he teased. He was already starting it, but this time I was going to do something so incredible that even he would have to sit up and take notice. I had a star wish. I'd show my rotten, red-headed older brother all right. What do you think she's going to do? I wonder. That night, I ran straight for the merry-go-round. We must have taken 50 turns on that carousel, but then my brother got off. I stayed on. I went around and around and around. I knew I could do this longer than you, I shouted to my brother, feeling proud but just a bit dizzy. Trisha, I heard my Bubby call out. Get off of that thing. It's time to go home. The last thing I remembered was stepping off of that platform. Next thing I knew, I woke up with Bubby sitting on the edge of my bed. Mom and Grandpa were there too. You gave us all a fright, Mama said. How do you feel? What happened? I asked. You fell, my rotten red-headed older brother announced with the biggest grin on his face. I don't know what we would have done, my Bubby said softly. Your brother carried you all the way home, and then he had to run to get Dr. Lee. You had to have stitches. I watched it all, he said excitedly. You fell off the merry-go-round right into some pop bottles, my Gramps added. You even passed out, my brother chirped. Looks like you finally did something special. It was from that exact moment that our relationship changed somehow. Thanks, Richie, I said to him. What's a big brother for anyway? He said, blushing. That night, we were all out in the yard on Hot Michigan nights, it was my family's custom to sleep outside where it was cool. Look at those stars, Bubby said quietly. Wishes are funny, aren't they? I said. Sometimes they come true differently than you think they will. That's why you have to be very careful what you wish for. It just may come true, Bubby said, and then squeezed both of our hands. Hang on to the grass, she whispered. Why, Bub? My brother asked. Because if we don't, we might float up into the stars. Then she leaned over and kissed us both 3 times. I kiss your eyes, and I hold both of your hearts in my good keeping. And this night I thank God that I walk this earth while with both of you. Amen. Then we all just lay on our blankets in the gentle summer night. I'll always be 4 years older than you, though, my brother whispered softly. Then he smiled. All of us held one another's hands, and then we all drifted off to sleep. The end. So, let's talk about it. We saw that the problem was what? Can you tell me? I think I heard it. Yes, the problem was that the brother and the sister didn't get along. She was really upset that he could do everything better than she could. Everything. She felt like she wasn't good enough and that she just couldn't find something that she could do better than him. And the solution was that he ended up taking care of her when she fell off the carousel. And they started to build a relationship after that because she saw that he actually started to care about her. But the main focus that we're going to be looking at is the major events that led up to the solution. So between the problem and the solution. So we are going to use the pictures in the text to find out what those major events might be. So I'm going to go through the pages and see what types of events were major that led to the problem and the solution. So we saw the rhubarb part, and this was a major event because it showed how much they started to have a bad relationship with. And then we saw that she went on the carousel, and the problem there was that she got sick. Now, that led to the solution because he ended up saving her. Now, those are the major events because those are the ones that stick out the most, that can help you tell somebody, like, here was the problem and this is the solution, and that's what led up to it. Now, a minor event would be that these were all of the things that he was better at. That's not really something that is going to tell you about the problem and the solution. And when she wished upon a star, it was an event that definitely tied in the end of the story, but that didn't really explain what the problem was and what happened with the solution. So that is the difference between a major event and a minor event. So major means super important, and minor means like super small. It doesn't really need to be said for us to get the message of the problem, the solution. So we will start to look at that with more stories as we go on. And the major events are also in the plot. So once we start to go up and down, the major events are what leads us up to the problem and the ones that lead us to the solution. So we will start to look at more of that stuff later, but for now, that is all that I have for you, and I will talk to you tomorrow. All right, goodbye.